Hi, my name is Lorraine Watry and welcome to my studio. I am a watercolor artist and I've worked with watercolor for 26 years now, and I thought I would start a new series of videos where I go over different tips, tricks, and techniques for working with watercolor. And hopefully these short videos will help you in your journey, and if you have a question or a technique that you would like to see, please comment below and I will try to accommodate that in a future video. Hi, today's tip and trick video is going to go over my 6 favorite mixes for black in watercolor. There are 2 reasons why I like to make black mixes rather than use tube blacks. And I have found that the tubes of black paint are consistent the whole way through, which is fine, except that I like to have some variety in the washes of color that I put down. And I don't necessarily want it to be a flat black the whole way through. Now you can mix tubes of black watercolor with other paints, so you could add some blue or some red or some other color into the black that you're using and get a variety that way. But the other reason that I like to mix my blacks is that I am not having to take up a space on my watercolor palette with 1 or 2 or more blacks, and I can have more colors on my palette then. So I am going to show you some of my favorite black mixes, and I will start with Phthalo Blue and Alizeran Crimson, and permanent Alizeran Crimson, and I will write the names in the video as I go so you'll see them. So one of the things about making a black is that when you go to pull the color out of your well, you want the paint to be wet, but you don't want it so wet that it's got more water than pigment. You want a lot of pigment in the mix. Clean my brush, and then I'm going to pull out permanent Alizeran Crimson. Now this mix, both pigments are staining pigments, and that just means that once they go down, they are harder to lift, and they also would want to maybe take over mixes because they're very strong pigments and they tend to push against the other colors. Since both of these are staining colors, that shouldn't be an issue. And I now have a lot of red on my brush, so I'm actually not going to take more than maybe what's on my brush, but I have color out just in case I need it. So this is how I tend to mix a black. So I've pulled color over, I'm kind of rolling my brush around in the Phthalo Blue, and then I can decide if I need more red, I can go get some. If you are mixing both completely together, sometimes you end up making a color that it leans too much toward red or too much toward the turquoisey blue, and then you don't get the color you want. So I'm going to go ahead and put this black on the paper, and then I'm going to show it as let's see, I'll show it with more turquoise in the mix first, since I'm over here. So I can push that black so that it's bluer or cooler, and I may even want a little more. Depends on the color you're trying to portray. And it may not show up really well in the video, but I'll take a shot of this at the end, and maybe that will make it easier to see. And then I'm going to take that black a little more over to the red, and I can come over and show you that now it is a little warmer black. So I can vary the look of the black, and I could even push it even farther if I wanted to. If I wanted more of a burgundy color, then I just put more of the red in it, and if I want more of a deep turquoise, then I can just add more of the phthalo. Actually, that's probably pushing it a little too much into the blue and not as much into the black. There we go. So there's a variety of colors here, and I will also go and put the original color at the top up here so that you can have that as a reference. So that's Phthalocyanine Blue. Most people just reduce it that name to Phthalo. I didn't need to get out more permanent alizarin, but I did. So there's the two original pigments. And I'm also using a smaller brush right now, and that can also help when you are trying to mix a black. All right, so that's the first one. The other that I use quite a bit is Ultramarine Blue, and this is just my, this is Holbein's Ultramarine Blue Light. The first two pigments were Daniel Smith's. And the reason I really like Daniel Smith pigments is that they are very easy to re-wet and pull out of the wells. They have a lot of pigment in them, and so when I go to wet them to do a dark mix, it doesn't take much to kind of wake up the pigment and pull out that color. And then this is burnt sienna, and this time before I mix it, I'll go ahead and lay it on the paper here. Get just a touch more blue out. All right, so Ultramarine Blue Light from Holbein and Daniel Smith's Burnt Sienna. And then I bring that color, I tend to use more of the blue in this mix because, and I had my brush loaded with Ultramarine Blue, because if I push too much Burnt Sienna in it, it will just be a dark brown. Now this black is a paler black. It's not going to be as dark as that first one. And depending on how much of each color I have in the mix again, so if I push it toward the burnt sienna side of things, you can really go kind of brown with it, or I could push it so that it's probably have too much blue on my brush now. So I'm going to go ahead and get some burnt sienna right quick and see if I can do a cooler side to that black. Actually, I'm probably getting the black as dark as it should be. So mixing color can often be a going back and forth and figuring out if you've got enough of one or the other color in the mix. And even after 26 years of using paint and working with the pigments, I still will have days where it just doesn't come out exactly as I want it to. All right, so that's a little on the cooler side. This is a little warmer, and I could have even put more burnt sienna in it and made it even warmer. So that's that mix. And then my third mix I like is Ultramarine Turquoise. And it's a very pretty green, deep green on the teal side of green. And then I'm going to get out Quinacridone Magenta. And when you're doing a mix and you're trying to play with going dark and getting a black color, one is you're looking for pigments on your palette that are dark naturally. So I aim toward the blues and that kind of thing because they are darker than yellows and some of the greens. Some of your greens can go really dark, like the Ultramarine Turquoise. And then also you are looking for mixes that are complementary mixes. So this Quinacridone Magenta is a cooler red, and the Ultramarine Turquoise is a cooler green. Not that that necessarily matters. But in this mix, I think it works well to make a deep kind of cooler black if you get it sort of fully to the black color. And then if you want to push it toward the magenta side, I'll have to put some of the Quin Magenta at the top up there. Then it will go more red, and I'll grab another brush here to pull out just a touch more of the Ultramarine Turquoise. And I can push it toward the turquoise side of things so it's a little greener looking in that black. And depending on where you're placing your blacks or how you're using them in your image, you might want one or more of these black mixes in order to get a variety of blacks. And I'll put just a touch of the Quin Magenta up here. Okay. And then the fourth mix will be, let's see, what did I have on my list? I will use Ultramarine Deep, which is basically like Ultramarine Blue. This is a Holbein color, and it is a deeper color. It is probably closer to French Ultramarine, leaning slightly more toward red, but it's a slightly darker ultramarine pigment. And then I like Daniel Smith's Quinacridone Burnt Scarlet. And this mix is basically a brown with a blue, but this brown is rusty colored, so it leans a little bit toward orange, which is the complement to ultramarine, or that color of blue. And let me see if I can get it to go dark enough. I forgot to put the color at the top again. There we go. So this is Ultramarine Deep with the Burnt Scarlet, and I find this black leans a little toward purple when I make it. And this would be on the warmer side, and I'll need a little more the ultramarine out. My brush wasn't wet enough. There it goes. To try to push it more toward the cooler side, which will look a little purple, but very deep in color. Okay. And I'll put the colors at the top. So this kind of working with your pigments, if you're not quite in the mood to paint, just playing with color mixes is a really good thing to do to practice and get some ideas about how your colors on your palette work together or don't, because sometimes you'll make mixes that you just don't care for at all. A lot of these colors that I am mixing for blacks can also be thinned down with water and used as grays. So they're multi-purpose. And the other reason, which I didn't state, that it's good to make mixes is that I may have used the colors that I am mixing together for these blacks elsewhere in my painting. And when you can use fewer colors and use them in other places in your painting, either in mixes or in other parts of the painting, then your painting will have more of a unified feeling to it. All right, so then I have Ultramarine Deep again with my transparent Pyrrol Orange. So that's the Ultramarine Deep. Oh, I will remember to put some color at the top though. Keep cleaning my brush prior to doing that. And this is the transparent Pyrrol Orange, which is a beautiful deep kind of cool orange color. So I'll go ahead and place that on the palette. And I think you can see some similarities here. These are all leaning toward warms. This is a little cooler. And then those mixes are complementary to each other. And since I have the transparent Pyrrol out, I'll go ahead and put the Ultra Deep on. And I have quite a bit of the transparent Pyrrol on my brush, so I may have to pull out more of the Ultramarine Deep. And then the other thing about trial and error with mixing of pigments is that by doing it yourself, you might find something you like, and then that can encourage you to look around and possibly see what others use as mixes. And so my favorite 6 right now might change, and I might find something else that I prefer. So it is really good to explore, and while you're exploring, maybe do some investigation and search for mixes that others make. Okay, so then I'm going to push it a little bluer, and I had too much of the orange in the mix at first. Okay, so this is slightly bluer, and it is a very almost navy blue at this moment. That's a little better, a little closer toward the dark that I'm trying to create, but it's cooler. And then if I pull a little more of the Pyrrol in the mix, well, okay, and then now it is on the warmer side of a black. Often when I am painting or trying to paint a black, I may take my board, which is usually tipped about 2 inches off of the table. I may take it off of the riser that I use and lay it flat, and that can help kind of keep the pigment where I'm placing it, and it can concentrate the color in that area rather than having the gravity of my board being tipped move the pigment down. So if you're trying to get a black, sometimes it's taking your board off of the if you have it tipped, laying it flat can help. Okay, and then this last one is sort of an unconventional mix, because I'm actually using, if you see where I'm reaching into my well over here, this is a Primatech pigment by Daniel Smith that's called Sodalite. And Sodalite is a natural mineral from the earth that is dark black, and it is a cooler, it has a little bit of a cool tone, almost an indigo look to the pigment itself. And I'll go ahead and place some of this on the paper so you can see it's very dark. And then I'm going to put some water next to it because it's also very granular, and it will make really lovely granular marks on the paper as it dries, especially if it's wet on wet. So the pigment itself is really nice, and that is my one exception for putting a tube black on my palette. I really like some of the mixes that I can get with that. It will not go as dark as some of the tubes of black that you can buy though. So one of the ways that I help increase the value of that black, if I want to use it and use its granulation, is I will take burnt umber. I'm trying to get enough out here. I probably need to fill my well a little bit more. And so I'll go ahead and place a little burnt umber on here. Because this is a cooler black, adding a little bit of burnt umber to it, I need to be careful not to just make a dark brown, but I can add some burnt umber to it and get a deeper black color if I want to. And then because I have the burnt umber on my brush already, I'll go ahead and make the warmer version. And then I need to get out just a touch more Sodalite. So this is Sodalite Genuine. That's pretty similar actually. I have all the Sodalite on my brush rather than, there we go. Okay, and I'm going to darken this one because it did lose some of its value, so it's just not quite as dark as some of the other mixes that you can make. The other way that you can work with darks is that you might put a layer down, let it dry, and then come back and add another layer. I know artists that will add layers over layers over layers to get the darks as dark as they might want them. So don't feel like you have to put it all down and have it work the first time. Some of these could possibly have other layers on them in order to increase their values. So I hope that was helpful, and I will take a picture of this and place it at the end of the video so that you can see some of these colors a little better, and hopefully you will explore mixing some blacks yourself. And if you have a tip, trick, or technique for watercolor that you would like to see, please comment below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.